A subsidy race is brewing between Europe and the United States over green investments. The European Commission has released a plan to make the EU a centre for clean technology. It's in response to the US's Inflation Reduction Act that gives tax cuts to American-made electric cars and batteries, and which the EU says could hurt its economy.
The economic transition towards green technology is starting to become a global race.
Now law.
In August 2022, the US President Joe Biden signed the US Inflation Reduction Act into law, which included $369 billion to fund green technology. Americans who buy US-made electric vehicles get a $7,500 tax rebate. It prompted major concern in Europe of a return to an America First policy, and that EU companies would be unfairly muscled out of the US, unable to challenge their subsidised American competitors.
It has to be simpler, it has to be faster, and it has to be more predictable. We will therefore propose the Net Zero Industry Act. It will focus on the key technologies for the shift to net zero. It will speed up permitting. This is one of the major complaints when you speak to the business.
But while Europe's already earmarked €1 trillion for green investments over the next decade, this new move isn't technically about specific pots of cash. It's about tinkering with EU rules which have prevented national governments from giving their own companies a competitive leg up. Experts like Jacob Kierkegaard say this could result in a split between bigger EU countries with big green industries and smaller ones.
We're going to see not a trade war, but basically France and Germany saying, oh, look, Joe Biden is doing it, China is doing it, we need to subsidize our industry as well. And preferably we in Paris and Berlin would like to decide what companies get it rather than the European Commission. This is, in my opinion, a great danger to the internal market, and I have to say I foresee a pretty titanic battle.
Europe also hopes the proposals put forward will prevent big global companies from relocating their production to the United States.
And for more on that, let's go over to Jack Parrick, who joins us from Brussels. Outline this plan for us, Jack. What sort of details have come in today from the EU?
Well, what's interesting, firstly, about it is that it's a plan, not a proposal. So this is just sort of idea of what the Commission is putting out there. It's not tying itself to any of the issues. What European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen put forward were different aspects to this. One, and the big sort of headline thing, is changing state aid rules, allowing countries to more easily and more heavily fund their own green businesses in order to compete with those big subsidies that American and Chinese companies are getting. They also want to repurpose some of the money from the EU's pandemic recovery fund. 250 billion euros, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said, could be sidelined into that. Some of it was already earmarked for green investments already, but it looks like they're putting more focus on that. They also want to increase skills and make sure that sort of there's a priority in funding people that are skilled to work in these green transition industries. And finally, they want to reassess their trade deals with other global partners in order to try and make sure that they're getting the critical materials that they need, for instance, for things like batteries. All of this is in response to a proposal that was put forward by an act that was signed into law, in fact, in August last year by the US President Joe Biden, where the Americans started funding their own green industries to the tune of about 369 billion euros. The EU knows that that sort of money could mean that its companies will be muscled out of the global competition, and that's what this is all about.
Jack, it sounds like the start of a new subsidy race.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, they would try and avoid talking about it in that way in the European Commission. They've been very keen to paint this as the suggestion that, you know, it's really good that the Americans are funding and investing in the green tech. It's good that all the global players are doing it, including China. But we need to do that as well. The European Union, and especially here in Brussels, has always been tentative around state aid rules. And this is all about the internal market of the European Union. The 27 countries countries all have a level playing field. And the European Commission, its job is to protect that level playing field. So if it starts allowing big companies and big countries to fund their big companies, for instance, in Paris and Berlin, those are the two, France and Germany are the two countries that are most in favour of allowing this state aid sort of relaxation, that those countries have the money to be able to fund those big players. Smaller countries then in the EU won't be able to compete internally in the EU's own market, let alone globally. So that is where the battle over this is going to come. EU leaders are meeting in Brussels next week. They're going to be thrashing this out, and I think we can expect quite a battle.
Where do you think all this could head? Because you say it's just a plan at the moment, but there's certainly a lot of noise being made on both sides of the Atlantic and here within the EU.
Well, the intention would be that this speeds up the green transition for everyone, everywhere. But it could cause some real battles, as I said, among the EU's member states, and also some big battles with the United States as well. One of the other reasons that they're doing this, though, Ben, is that they want to make sure that that investment in the United States that was announced by the White House doesn't mean that big global players, big green tech companies, don't relocate all of their operations to the United States rather than in the EU as well. So it's not only about funding the EU's own companies, but for the multinational companies to keep Europe being an attractive place for them to be. As I say, there's a big battle to happen over this. This is just a plan. It's not even a proposal yet. It was just a communication that came out of the Commission. But it is now sort of opening the floodgates for the real discussions on how this move forwards to start taking place.
DW's Jack Parrick in Brussels. Thank you.